After sitting behind this bench for years and witnessing thousands of broken lives, I have come to realize one undeniable truth. Justice is not just about the law, it is about the heart that bleeds behind the evidence. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the day. A man named Samuel Harrison walked into my courtroom. Samuel was 82 years old, with skin like worn parchment and eyes that had seen the Great Depression, wars, and the slow fading of his own strength. He didn't come for himself. He came for his son, Michael. Michael was 55, standing there in shackles, his face a map of regret and years of bad choices. But as I looked at Samuel, the father, I didn't just see an old man. I saw a soul that was exhausting its last flickering candle of hope. His shoulders were hunched, not just from the weight of time, but from a burden no parent should ever carry, the shame and the desperate love for a child who had lost his way. If you have ever felt that sharp tug in your chest, the one you feel when you see a person who has spent their entire life giving to others, only to be left with nothing but a broken heart, then I want you to stop. Take a deep breath, clear the world around you, prepare yourself for an emotional journey that captures humanity in its most raw, most vulnerable form. It was a cold Tuesday morning, the kind of day where the air is thin and the silence in the courtroom feels heavy, like a physical blanket. There were no loud arguments, no dramatic outbursts, just the steady, rhythmic ticking of the clock on the wall, a reminder that for Samuel, time was a luxury he no longer possessed. When he was called to the stand to speak for his son, the room didn't just go quiet. It became a sanctuary of bated breath. He moved slowly, leaning heavily on a cane that clicked against the floor, a sound that echoed like a heartbeat. His white hair was neatly combed. His old suit jacket, though frayed at the sleeves, was meticulously brushed. He had taken 2 buses and walked 3 blocks in the biting cold just to be there, because for a father like Samuel, being late to his son's last chance was not an option. As he reached the bench and looked up at me with those tired, watery blue eyes, I saw everything. I saw the man who had worked 40 years in the steel mills to put food on the table. I saw the man who had buried a wife and still kept going. And now I saw a man who was ready to beg. His hands were shaking, gripping the wood of the podium so hard his knuckles turned white. His voice was low, but it carried the resonance of nearly a century of survival. "Your Honor," he said, and that single word seemed to vibrate with a pain so deep it made the very air in the room feel cold. "I am not here to tell you my son is innocent. I am here to tell you that I am his father, and I am the one who has failed." As Samuel stands there, I don't just see a witness. I see a physical map of 1,000 sacrifices. Look closely at the deep furrows etched into his forehead. In the study of physiognomy, those aren't just signs of age. Those are deep trenches carved by decades of late night anxieties, of lying awake, wondering if his child would ever find his way. His hands shaking as they grip the railing are gnarled and calloused, a testament to 40 years of manual labor in the heat of steel mills, where the weight of iron slowly bowed his back just so he could provide a roof for his family. In this room, the silence begins to feel painful. I see young lawyers stop shuffling their papers. I see the court clerks look up from their screens. Even the most cynical observers feel a surge of guilt chilling their spine. Why? Because Samuel represents a generation we are slowly forgetting, the generation of givers who never asked for anything in return. When he looks at his son, Michael, those cloudy, pale blue eyes don't hold anger. They hold a soul-crushing sorrow, a type of unconditional love that only those who have been parents can truly understand. "Your Honor," Samuel continues, his voice trembling but resonant like an old bell in a quiet valley. "When my wife passed 22 years ago, I promised her at her graveside that I would protect Michael. I worked the double shifts. I went hungry so he could have a life. But perhaps I indulged his grief too much and forgot to teach him how to stand on his own." He pauses, a ragged, sharp intake of breath making the whole room tighten. Do you know that feeling? The feeling when you realize that your life's work is crumbling right before your eyes, and the person you love most is the one destroying themselves? The greatest fear of an 82-year-old father isn't death. It is the haunting fear that when he closes his eyes for the last time, his son will have no one left, buried under the cold shadow of punishment. Samuel isn't asking for justice for Michael, he is pleading for a form of redemption for his own soul. He stands there, frail and small under the fluorescent lights of the court, yet his shadow looms large like a monument to loyalty. I look into those eyes and I see the faces of millions of parents across America, those who are sacrificing their final golden years to fix mistakes they didn't even make. As Samuel's voice fades into a fragile whisper, I turn my gaze toward Michael. In the quiet of the courtroom, you can almost hear the sound of a man's pride breaking. Michael, who had spent most of the hearing looking at the floor with a mask of indifference, finally looks up. And in that moment, the atmosphere shifts. Have you ever seen a person realize they are the villain in someone else's tragedy? That is what I saw on Michael's face. In the language of the soul, this is the moment of reckoning where the ego is stripped away, leaving only the raw, ugly truth of one's choices. Michael's jaw tightens, and for the first time, his eyes begin to well up. But these aren't just tears of fear for his own freedom. They are tears of shame, the most piercing emotion a son can feel when confronted by the saintly patience of a father. I look at Michael's features, the sharp, defensive lines around his mouth that speak of years of blaming the world for his failures. But today, those lines are softening, collapsing under the weight of his father's unconditional love. It is a direct hit to the ego trap. Every man wants to be a hero in his father's eyes, but Michael is forced to see himself as the thief who stole his father's final years of peace. Your Honor, Samuel says, his trembling hand reaching out as if to touch the air between him and his son. He is a good man. He just got lost in the darkness after his mother died. He's not a criminal, he's a grieving boy in a 55-year-old body. The room remains in a stifling silence. You see, the power of this story isn't in the crime Michael committed. It's in the revolution of the heart happening right now. It challenges every viewer watching. Have you ever taken for granted the person who would walk through fire for you? Have you ever let your own pride blind you to the sacrifices being made in your name? I lean forward, the weight of the gavel feeling heavier than usual. I ask Michael, do you see this man? Do you see the hands that worked for 40 years so you wouldn't have to beg? Do you see the father who is currently apologizing for your sins? Michael can no longer hold his head up. He sobs, not a loud, dramatic cry, but a quiet, gut-wrenching sound that vibrates through the floorboards. It is the sound of a man finally realizing that the freedom he chased through bad choices was actually a prison, and the only true home he ever had was standing right there, leaning on a wooden cane, ready to forgive him one last time. The courtroom remains locked in a silence so profound it feels as though the walls themselves are leaning in to listen. This is the moment I call the moral suspension, where the rigid mechanics of the law meet the fluid, messy reality of human life. As a judge, I am often seen as a symbol of cold, unyielding authority. But look at my eyes in this moment. If you look closely, you'll see the struggle. I am weighing the evidence on the desk against the weight of a father's lifetime of labor. In the world of power and politics, we are taught that rules are absolute, but in this room, on this morning, the only absolute is the heart-wrenching love of an 82-year-old man for his broken son. I look back at Samuel. He hasn't moved. He is standing as straight as his fragile spine will allow, a final act of dignity before the state. I notice the way he avoids looking at the prosecutor. It's not out of fear, but out of a quiet, weary pride. He isn't here to argue points of law. He is here to offer himself as collateral. Your Honor, he speaks again, his voice gaining a sudden, unexpected clarity that cuts through the stillness. If there is a price to be paid for his mistakes, let me pay it. I have few years left, and I would spend them all in a cell if it meant he could have one more chance to be the man I know he can be. A soft gasp ripples through the gallery. You see, this is the ultimate sacrifice. For our audience, those of you who have watched your children grow, who have worried over their stumbles, who have felt the sting of their failures as if they were your own, this hits home. It forces every person in this room to ask themselves, what would I give up for those I love? The prosecutor, a man known for his sharp tongue and relentless pursuit of maximum sentences, slowly closes his file. He looks at Samuel, then at Michael, and for the first time today, he doesn't say a word. Even the law, in all its majesty, feels small in the presence of such a pure, unadulterated plea. I pick up my pen, but I don't write. I look at Michael one last time. He is no longer the defiant defendant. He is a man being crushed by the weight of a grace he doesn't deserve. This is the mirror of accountability. When the world punishes you, you can get angry. But when the person you've hurt offers to take your punishment for you, your soul has nowhere to hide. I can see the terror of realization in his eyes, the realization that his father's love is the most expensive thing he has ever wasted. The room is waiting for my gavel. They are waiting for a verdict. But what they don't realize is that the real judgment has already been passed by the old man with the wooden cane. I let the silence linger for a few more seconds. In a courtroom, silence is often more powerful than the loudest argument. It forces a person to sit with their own conscience. I look at Samuel, who is still standing, his breathing shallow, but his spirit unyielding. Then I turn my attention back to Michael. Michael, I begin, my voice dropping to a tone that is no longer just judicial, but paternal. You have been looking for an escape your whole life. You escaped into bad habits, you escaped into the wrong crowds, and you escaped into the comfort of your father's unending grace. But look at him, really look at him. In the study of human connection, there is a moment where a person finally sees the humanity of their parents not as invincible pillars, but as fragile beings who are running out of time. I use this moment to trigger the affection trigger. Every day your father spent working in those mills, I tell Michael, he wasn't just forging steel, he was trying to forge a future for you. And every time you broke the law, you weren't just breaking a rule, you were chipping away at the foundation of the man who gave you life. You are 55 years old. You are no longer a child, yet your father is still standing here, acting as your shield. Does that not weigh on your soul? I see the audience leaning in. Many of them are around Samuel's age. They know the fear of a child who never grew up. They know the exhaustion of a love that is never repaid. I am speaking for them. This is the mirror of reality. I want every viewer to feel that sharp realization. Our parents are not our safety nets forever. I then turn to the legal aspect, but with a twist of mercy based on responsibility. The law demands a penalty, Michael. It demands that for every action, there is a consequence. If I follow the book to the letter, you will spend years away from the only person who truly loves you. And Samuel, at 82, does not have years to wait for you. The tension in the room reaches its peak. This is the conflict of justice. But, I continue, justice without mercy is just revenge, and mercy without accountability is just weakness. I am looking for a third way, a way that honors your father's sacrifice but forces you to finally carry your own weight. I see a flicker of something new in Michael's eyes, not just fear, but desperation to change. This is the psychological turning point. He isn't just afraid of the cell anymore. He is terrified of letting his father die while he is still a failure. The room holds its breath as I prepare to deliver a verdict that will change both their lives forever. I pick up the gavel, its wooden weight echoing the gravity of the lives hanging in the balance. The room is so still you could hear a pin drop. I look at Samuel first. Mr. Harrison, I say, and for the first time, I let a small, respectful smile soften my face. Your fatherhood is a masterclass in devotion, but your son cannot grow in your shadow if that shadow is always hiding his mistakes. Then I turn my gaze to Michael. The shackles on his wrists clink a cold, metallic reminder of his current reality. Michael, the law says you deserve to be behind bars. The prosecutor has every right to demand your freedom be taken away. But I pause, letting the word but hang in the air like a lifeline. I am not going to send you to prison today. A collective gasp fills the room. Samuel's knees buckle slightly, and he has to lean harder on his cane. But I raise my hand to stop the premature relief. Wait, this is not a free pass. This is a contract of the soul. I am sentencing you to a different kind of confinement. I am sentencing you to his life. I lean forward, making sure Michael feels the full intensity of my gaze. I am placing you on strict probation for the next 3 years. Your primary legal requirement mandated by this court is that you will live with your father. You will be his hands when they are too tired to work. You will be his legs when he cannot walk. You will handle every meal, every doctor's appointment, and every chore in that house. You will spend every waking hour proving to this man that his 40 years in the steel mills were not in vain. This is the emotional pivot. I am giving Michael a chance to be the hero instead of the villain. If you miss one day of care, if you raise your voice in anger, or if you return to the habits that brought you here, the door to the cell will open and you will never see him again. Do you understand? Michael is shaking now, his face buried in his hands, nodding fervently. He isn't crying for mercy anymore. He is crying for the responsibility he has finally been granted. I look at the audience, the seniors who have felt neglected, the parents who just want to be seen. This verdict is for them. It is a promise that justice can also mean healing. I strike the gavel once, crack not as a punishment, but as a seal on a new beginning. As the echo of my gavel fades, the heavy, suffocating weight that had occupied this room for hours finally begins to lift. I watch Michael. For a long time, he doesn't move. He remains hunched over, his shoulders shaking with a sob that is no longer about the fear of a prison cell, but about the overwhelming realization of grace. This is the revolution of the heart. In the world of clinical psychology, we call this a psychic break, where the old, selfish self dies to make room for a man who finally understands the value of what he was about to lose. I see Samuel, the 82-year-old father, slowly stand up. His legs are weak, his hands still trembling, but his face, look at his face. The physiognomy of sorrow that I described earlier, those deep trenches of anxiety, seem to soften under the court's lights. It is as if 10 years of misery have been washed away by a single act of judicial mercy. He doesn't look at me. He looks only at his son. He moves toward the defense table, his cane clicking against the floor, a sound that no longer feels like a countdown to tragedy, but like a steady drumbeat of hope. When he reaches Michael, he places one gnarled, steel worker's hand on his son's shoulder. It is a moment of pure, unscripted humanity that leaves everyone in the gallery, from the hardened reporters to the weary bailiffs, wiping their eyes. "Come on, son," Samuel whispers. "Let's go home. We have work to do." This is the affection trigger in its highest form. It reminds our audience that no matter how far a child wanders, the porch light of a father's love is never truly turned off. I watch Michael stand up. He turns to the officers to have his shackles removed. As the metal cuffs hit the table with a heavy clink, it symbolizes more than just physical freedom. It is the shedding of his identity of failure. He looks at his father, and for the first time in this entire trial, he stands tall. He takes his father's arm, not because he has to, but because he wants to. He has transitioned from being the burden to being the support. I see them walk toward the back of the courtroom, the old man leaning on the son who nearly broke him, and I realize today the law didn't just punish a crime, it saved a family from extinction. This is the high stakes of storytelling, showing that the real victory isn't winning a case, but winning back a soul. The courtroom doors swing shut behind Samuel and Michael, but the air in this room remains charged with the weight of what we just witnessed. As I sit here, looking at the empty space where an 82-year-old man stood ready to sacrifice his final days, I am reminded of a truth that often gets lost in the noise of our busy lives. Justice, in its purest form, is not about bars and chains. It is about the restoration of the human spirit. For those of you watching, I want you to take a moment and look at your own life. Who is the Samuel in your story? Who is the person who worked the double shifts, who carried the quiet burdens, and who would still stand as your shield today, no matter how many times you've stumbled? In the study of legacy, we often think of wealth or monuments, but the greatest legacy any human being can leave is the gift of a second chance. Today, Samuel didn't just walk out with his son, he walked out with his pride restored. He is no longer the father of a convict, he is a mentor to a man in progress. This is the emotional resolution. We all want to believe that our sacrifices matter, that our love has the power to redeem even the most broken parts of our world. To our viewers who are in their golden years, your strength is not measured by your physical power, but by the depth of your endurance. You are the silent anchors of our society. I lean back, the gavel resting quietly on the bench. My final thought for Michael, and for anyone who has ever felt lost, is this: redemption is not a destination, it is a daily choice. Michael was not set free to return to his old life. He was set free to serve the love that saved him. If you have been taking a loved one for granted, if you have allowed pride to build a wall between you and those who would sacrifice everything for you, let this be your wake up call. Do not wait for a courtroom to realize the value of the hands that raised you. Do not wait for a last plea to say the words that need to be said. This trial is over, but the story is just beginning. As the sun sets on this cold Tuesday, I am left with a profound sense of hope because as long as there are people like Samuel Harrison, people who believe in the power of grace over gratefulness, there is no soul too lost to be found. Cherish the time you have, honor the sacrifices made in your name, and remember, the most powerful verdict ever delivered is the one that allows a heart to heal. I am Judge Boyd, and this is the justice we all hope to find.